Hello, everyone. Good night. For your hope in me and to help me create better stories, tell me in the comments where and when you listen to my stories, and get ready to start the story by liking and subscribing. Chapter 1: The Whispering Gates. In the soft hush of twilight, where the sun dipped low like a weary traveler seeking rest, there stood the quiet Citadel. Its ancient stone walls, woven with threads of ivy and moss, rose gently from the earth, cradling the valley like a mother's arms. Built in the year 1066, just after the great tapestry of history unfurled its threads in the fields of Hastings, where knights in chainmail first learned the weight of honor and the lightness of loyalty, the Citadel had been a sanctuary for weary souls, not a fortress of thunderous battles, but a haven of quiet resolve, where the air carried the faint scent of lavender fields and the distant murmur of a brook that sang lullabies to the stones. Our knight, Sir Elowin, was no stranger to the clamor of the world beyond. Clad in armor polished not by war's fire, but by the patient hands of village smiths, he had ridden from the misty moors of Cornwall, where the Celts once whispered secrets to the wind. Elowin was a knight of the old order, sworn to the chivalric code penned in the courts of Eleanor of Aquitaine in the 12th century, a vow not of sword and shield alone, but of courtesy, courage, and compassion. His helm, etched with vines rather than lions, rested now upon his saddle, and his steed, a gentle mare named Lyril, cropped the grass with slow, contented bites. The journey had been long, but the Citadel's gates beckoned like an open book, inviting him to turn the page into peace. As the sun's last rays painted the sky in strokes of rose and gold, Elowin approached the whispering gates. They were not iron-barred sentinels, but oak timbers carved with runes from the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, symbols of warding that spoke of protection without force. A soft creak echoed as they parted, not with the groan of hinges long unused, but with the sigh of old friends reuniting. Beyond lay the courtyard, where flagstones gleamed underfoot like polished river pebbles, warmed by the day's gentle sun. Lanterns hung from wrought iron hooks, their flames yet unlit, waiting for the velvet cloak of night to awaken them. "Welcome, Sir Elowin," murmured the gatekeeper, an elder named Thorn, whose voice was as smooth as aged mead. Thorn, with hair like spun silver and eyes that held the wisdom of the Domesday Book, William the Conqueror's great survey of 1086, which mapped the lands with quill and ink rather than blade, bowed slightly. "The Citadel has waited for one such as you. Here, the winds carry no tidings of strife, only the rhythm of the seasons." Elowin dismounted, his boots whispering against the stone. He felt the tension of the inner bailey unfolded like a dream half remembered. Arbors arched overhead, heavy with climbing roses whose petals drifted down in lazy spirals, each one a fleeting kiss from the garden's heart. In the center stood the great hall, its thatched roof sloping like a protective brow, built in the style of Norman keeps, but softened by Saxon hearts, round and inviting, where bards once sang of Beowulf's quiet valor over flagons of burble ale. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney, carrying scents of chamomile and thyme, herbs gathered from the apothecary's plots. These were the simples of Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century visionary, who taught that nature's gifts could soothe the spirit as surely as they healed the flesh. Elowin was led to his chambers by a young squire named Finn, whose steps were light as falling leaves. The room overlooked the eastern ramparts, where the horizon met the sea in a line as straight and serene as a monk's illuminated manuscript. A four-poster bed dominated the space, its linens woven from flax grown in the Citadel's own fields. Soft as a cloud, dyed in hues of twilight blue. Beside it sat a carved oak chest filled with scrolls from the scriptorium, tales of King Arthur's court, not the clashes of Excalibur, but the quieter codes of Merlin's council, emphasizing harmony with the land. As night deepened, the Citadel came alive in whispers. From the stables, Liriel's soft wickers blended with the rustle of owls in the eaves. In the kitchens, cooks stirred pots of barley porridge, simmered with honey from beehives that hummed like distant prayers. Elowin washed the dust from his face in a basin of rosewater, the petals floating like tiny boats on a calm lake. He changed into a tunic of undyed wool, light as breath, and sat by the window. The stars emerged one by one, pinpricks of light in the vast black canvas, much like the constellations charted by medieval astronomers in their abbeys, guides not for conquest, but for contemplation. A knock came, soft as a heartbeat. It was Lady Eloria, the Citadel's steward, a woman whose grace echoed the troubadour's songs from the courts of Provence. Her gown flowed like water over stones, embroidered with silver threads, depicting the labors of the months, sowing in spring, harvesting in autumn, as detailed in the 15th century Très riche air du Duc de Berry. "Supper awaits, Sir Knight," she said, her voice a melody that lulled the ear. "But first, breathe with me, in and out. Let the evening air fill your lungs, like the tide filling the shore." They walked to the hall together, the corridor lit by tapers that flickered like fireflies. Elowin felt his pulse slow, matching the distant chime of a vesper bell, tolled at the 8th hour, as in the monastic hours of St. Benedict's rule from the 6th century, a rhythm designed to align the soul with the cosmos. At the table, platters held bread baked in clay ovens, its crust golden and crisp, paired with wheels of cheese from goats that grazed the hillsides. There were figs from the orchards, their skins plump and purple, and a compote of apples stewed with cinnamon, spices traded along the silk road routes that reached even the quiet corners of England by the 13th century. As they ate, stories unfolded like petals in the moonlight. Thorne spoke of the Citadel's founding, how it rose from the ashes of the harrying of the North in 1069 to 70, a time when William's armies scorched the land. But here, masons rebuilt with hope, incorporating Romanesque arches that curved like embracing arms. Thing shared tales of the blacksmith's forge, where horseshoes were shaped not for speed in battle, but for steady trots along pilgrim paths, echoing the Canterbury Tales pilgrims of the 14th century, who journeyed for solace rather than glory. Elowin's eyes grew heavy, the warmth of the hearth wrapping around him like a blanket. Lady Eloria poured a draught of valerian tea, its earthy notes promising dreams untroubled. "Rest now," she whispered. "The Citadel guards its own. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on the wind, carried to places where worries dissolve into mist." He returned to his chamber, the door closing with a sigh. Slipping between the sheets, Elowin gazed at the canopy above, embroidered with scenes of peaceful meadows, cows grazing under eternal summer skies, as in the Bayeux tapestry's quieter margins. His breathing deepened, in and out, sinking with the rise and fall of his chest. The world outside faded. The brook's murmur became a lullaby. The stars, a canopy of forgotten wishes. And as sleep claimed him, gentle as a lover's touch, Elowin dreamed of gates that opened not to war, but to gardens where time itself paused, whispering, "Here you are safe. Here you are whole." Chapter 2. The Garden of Gentle Echoes. Dawn arrived at the quiet citadel, not with a trumpet's blare, but with the tentative song of a thrush, its notes threading through the morning mist like silver stitches on linen. The light filtered through arched windows, gilding the stone floors in hues of amber and pearl. Sir Elowin stirred, his body heavy with the sweet languor of unhurried slumber. The bed had cradled him through the night, its mattress stuffed with wool from the Citadel's own sheep, fleeced in the spring, as shepherds had done since the time of the Doomsday Book, when every flock was tallied for the king's peace. Rising, he felt the cool kiss of air on his skin, carrying the promise of dew-kissed earth. He donned a simple surcoat of linen, belted at the waist with leather from tanneries that used oak bark for curing, a craft passed down from Roman settlers in the 1st century AD. Stepping into the corridor, Elowin heard the citadel awaken in whispers, the clink of pottery in the scullery, where maids drew water from the well, dug deep into chalk layers that held the memory of ancient seas, and the low hum of bees in the cloister garden. Breakfast was taken in the solar, a sunlit room with tapestries depicting the labors of the months, much like those in the Gothic manuscripts of the 13th century, where January's feasting gave way to February's quiet mending. The table bore oatcakes, warm from the griddle, drizzled with heather honey gathered by Finn under the guidance of the apiary master. "Honey soothes the throat and the soul," Finn said, his voice bright but soft, as the healers of Salerno's medical school taught in the 11th century, blending Greek wisdom with air. Peaceful cloths for cloaks and curtains. As he ate, Lady Eloria joined him, her presence a calm anchor. "Today we tend the gardens," she suggested, her words flowing like a stream over smooth stones. "There, the earth teaches patience, as it did for the monks of Glastonbury Abbey, who in the 12th century cultivated roses said to bloom from Joseph's staff." The garden sprawled behind the keep, a labyrinth of raised beds and herb spirals, enclosed by wattle fences woven from hazel rods, a technique from the medieval villeins strips, where common lands were shared for the common good. Paths of crushed gravel crunched softly underfoot, leading to plots of rosemary, its needles blue-green and fragrant, used by apothecaries like Trotula of Salerno in the 12th century to calm restless minds. Lavender rose swayed in the breeze, their spikes nodding like sleepy sentinels, releasing scents that eased the breath and quieted the pulse. Eloin knelt beside Lady Eloria, his hands sinking into the loamy soil, rich with compost from the middens. Waste turned to wealth, as in the sustainable manners of the 14th century, when the Black Death taught humanity the fragility of haste. Together, they weeded, pulling tender shoots with care, each motion deliberate and slow. "Feel the earth," she murmured, "in and out. Let it ground you." As the Knights of the Templar Order grounded their vows in the soil of the Holy Land, building not empires, but enduring wells for the thirsty. The sun climbed lazily, warming their backs like a benevolent hand. Birds flitted from branch to bough, robins with breasts like embers, finches in cloaks of olive, their songs a counterpoint to the rustle of leaves. In a shaded corner stood the physic garden, where foxglove bloomed in bells of purple, its digitalis essence later discovered by 18th century physicians, but known intuitively to medieval herbalists for steadying the heart. Eloin pruned the mint, its leaves crushed under his fingers to release a cool, invigorating mist, evoking the cooling baths of roaming villas that dotted Britain's landscape even in the Dark Ages. As midday approached, they paused beneath a yew tree, ancient as the Citadel itself, its branches drooping like weary elders. Thorn brought a basket of bread and cheese, along with a flagon of small beer, brewed from barley malted in the brewhouse, lightly fermented as was customary in monastic scriptoria to sustain the mind without clouding it. They picnicked in silence at first, the only sounds the chew of bread and the distant low of cattle in the meadows. Then, stories flowed of the Magna Carta in 1215, not as a clash of barons and kings, but as a quiet charter of rights, ensuring even the lowborn a measure of rest from tyranny. Afternoon brought a walk along the ramparts, where the walls, built with lime mortar mixed from chalk kilns fired in the 11th century, offered views of rolling hills dotted with sheep, their wool the backbone of England's trade routes to Flanders. Eloin leaned on the parapet, feeling the stones' absorbed warmth, a testament to the mason's craft. Layers of rubble and ashlar, fitted without mortar in places, enduring storms with the grace of a dancer. Below, the tilt-yard lay fallow, not for jousts of splintered lances, but for falconry mews, where birds of prey learned the art of return, mirroring the knight's own vow to circle back to peace. Lirel joined them in the paddock, her coat brushed to a shine by stable hands, using currycombs of horn, a tool from the horsemanship treatises of the 13th century. Eloin walked her along the bridle paths, the reins loose in his hand, her gait a rocking rhythm that lulled the senses. They passed orchards of apple and pear, trees grafted from Norman stock, brought after the conquest, their fruits ripening in orbs of crimson and gold, harbingers of the harvest festivals that celebrated abundance over conquest. As the sun began its descent, painting the gardens in lengthening shadows, Eloin and Lady Eloria returned to the herb beds. They harvested chamomile for evening tisanes, its daisy-like flowers plucked with fingers that moved like whispers. This flower, she said, was prized by the nuns of the Benedictine orders, who in their infirmaries brewed it to invite sleep, much as the stars invite the night. The work was rhythmic: snip, gather, bundle, each action a thread in the tapestry of tranquility. Supper that evening was a simple affair in the hall, lit by beeswax candles that burned with a steady, smoke-free flame, crafted from the very hives Finn tended. Venison stew, slow-cooked over peat fires that smoldered without crackle, shared a trencher with root vegetables from the root cellar, parsnips and carrots, stored through winter as in the manorial accounts of the 13th century. Wine from the Citadel's vineyards, pressed from vines planted by Cistercian monks in the 12th century, flowed in moderation, its tannins soft as a sigh. Around the fire, the company gathered, Thorn reciting verses from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, not the battles, but the quiet entries of comets and harvests, markers of time's gentle passage. Finn played a lute strung with catgut from the tanner's yards, its melodies echoing the Trouvère songs of the Crusades, ballads of love's endurance, not war's fury. Elowin listened, his eyelids drooping, the warmth seeping into his bones like a healing balm. Retiring once more, he paused at the window, watching fireflies dance in the garden like wandering souls at peace. The tea steamed in his cup, chamomile unfurling its petals in the hot water, releasing vapors that curled upward like ascending puers. Sipping slowly, he felt the day's labor settle into a profound ease. In and out, he breathed, echoing Lady Aloria's words. The bed welcomed him back, sheets cool against sun-warmed skin. Dreams came softly that night, woven from the garden's echoes, paths that led nowhere but to themselves. Flowers, the end.